Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Noah Rothman is one of our regular guests that we really love. Noah is a senior writer for the National Review. He often appears on the editor's podcast, sometimes on the commentary podcast. But I'm feeling a little left out, Noah. You had that big National Review party in D.C., and I wasn't invited. Not that you had anything to do with it, but I just want to point out, that some of us old guys, we like to go to a party every now and then.
That is an unacceptable oversight that I had absolutely nothing to do with and will take no responsibility for.
All right,
but
good.
I'm with you.
And the good thing about having a platform, Noah, is I can hijack it for anything that gets under my skin. And a case called Ludlow versus Foote versus Ludlow School Committee has gotten under my skin. Now, you're a parent, so I want to know how you would react to this. An 11-year-old girl goes to school. The school librarian has all the sixth graders do a biographical sketch of themselves. Then all of a sudden on her school-issued computer, up pops LGBTQ stuff. And then she tells a teacher she's feeling attracted to girls. And the teacher does the right thing. She calls the mom and says, here's an issue. And the mom says, thank you very much. Mom and dad send an email to everybody in the school. Thank you for your concern. We know you think she's depressed. We're working on it. We have a psychologist. We're in charge. Leave her alone. Please do not indulge gender transition stuff. Well, turns out that the school not only indulges it, they can participate in a conspiracy to conceal from the parents that the girl has adopted a new name and is getting deeper and deeper into gender fluidity. Now, I don't talk about gender fluidity much on the show. I do talk about schools a lot. Now, that's bad enough. But the First Circuit, in what could only be called judicial mutiny, threw out 100 years of case law to say parents don't matter. Assume for a moment I'm being fair. What do you think of this?
Yeah, so this is all news to me. This case was not on my radar until Dwayne alerted me precisely 120 seconds ago.
All right.
So I've only dove into the surface details of this case. And as far as I can tell, your assessment makes sense to me. Again, having very little knowledge of where this came from or what the logic was that the court appealed to. But from what I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the court is essentially saying that their teachers are not really engaging in medical care or mental health care.
That's
so
correct.
Therefore, they don't have any obligation to inform the parents that they're essentially engaging in social engineering under their nose. Is that correct?
That's correct. The First Circuit makes a finding that it's not, that the parents allege that it was wrong because it's medical care and you can't do that without our consent. And the First District went along with the finding, it's not medical care, it's just gender fluidity. But generally speaking, I can't imagine. I've got 7 grandchildren. I would be peeled off the roof if any of my grandchildren if this happened to them.
It seems like there are 2 issues here, right? The first is what you raised initially, insofar as this doesn't seem to comport with judicial precedent or the social contract, as I understand it, even living in a dark blue state in New Jersey, as I do, and sending my kids to public schools, as I do. I think that just common sense would dictate that if you're engaging in a potentially life-altering decision like this, that and if you have an open line of communication with your teachers, that you should expect the same from the school officials, and certainly some deference to what the will is of the parents who are in charge of this minor. The second is your second point, which is that this is obviously an attempt to undermine parental control of somebody who has not reached the age of legal majority, an attempt to subvert and undermine parental influence in order to advance a very controversial social agenda around transitioning minors, which, by the way, there's a big backlash against that in the culture, if you haven't noticed, guys.
I have. And, the other thing that would be fun is if the editors passed around the 45-page opinion, and you have some fine writers there, and Rich Lowry and MBD and Charles C.W. Cook and yourself and Philip and the whole gang. They're fine writers. I think you would all agree it is the worst piece of writing that you've ever seen coming from a circuit court of appeals. It is really awful. At one point, they say, "Dear reader." Honestly, I'm not making it up. They say, "Gentle reader." They say, "Gentle reader." Noah, I just wrote a piece, last week that impeachment is not the way to go with judges we don't like, that's bad. It's bad for the rule of law. It's bad for institutionalism. And then I wake up the next day, and here's a case of judicial mutiny. What do we do with judicial mutiny?
Well, in our system, we don't impeach judges who get case law wrong, who get decisions wrong. As
I
we
agree.
understand it. The reason for that is because there's three levels of appeals and overlap. You can get to the Supreme Court, and if this decision does make it to the Supreme Court, I think you and I would both agree that it's on very shaky legal ground. It doesn't sound like it's predicated on jurisprudence, on previous decisions. It sounds like an effort to legislate from the bench, which is exactly why we have the Republican Supreme Court majority we have. This was a fundamental argument that Republicans made over the course of a generation, over the course of which Republicans eventually got control of the White House and managed to reshape the federal bench in ways that created an originalist majority. The originalist majority exists to stop this sort of thing.
Now, here's what's really going to make you interested.
Establishing legislative standards at the bench.
It's a 3-judge panel. It's a per curiam opinion, means none of them would sign their name to it, so all 3 of them own it. 2 of the judges are Biden appointees with maybe 5 years experience total. The other is an Obama appointee. It seems to me it is an aggressive middle finger to the Supreme Court and to Donald Trump. It's like the resistance is Don Robes. Am I being paranoid?
No, it doesn't. I'm not from as you've stated the case. It does seem to me like an artifact of a pre-election mentality that was dominant on the political left, that believed that the grand arc of history was going to eventually deliver some sort of a social compact that would accept as normal, natural, and righteous the notion that minors can, outside of the watchful eye of their parents, be stewarded, be guided, goaded even, into changing their identities and perhaps even engaging in medical treatment in order to permanently alter their physiology based on an assumption, not even a diagnosis, but an assumption that they're suffering from gender dysphoria. I think we have a political compact in this country now that is pretty definitively against that. Democrats who have some sense of political self-preservation have abandoned that.
Big assumption, Noah. Big assumption. Do you think Democrats have a sense of political survivability?
Yeah, so retiring New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen, now that she's retiring, can say the quiet part out loud and join with people like John Fetterman and others who have sloughed off the shackles of the activist class that compelled them to supplicate before the LGBTQ activists who insisted that it was righteous, normal, and good for young people to change and alter their identity in immutable ways. That is behind us. Now, the activists are mounting a rearguard action. I agree with you, but it is nevertheless a rearguard action, a retreat, trying to mitigate their losses as they find more defensible terrain. This is indefensible terrain. What this
I know, you got to find defensible lines. This is not one of them. Noah, I cannot wait till you pass it around at the next gathering of the editors, or whether you're over at commentary, because I don't know that you can get past the writing. I don't know that Charles C.W. Cook is going to be able to gag down the writing. We'll see. Noah C. Rothman on X. Always a pleasure.